So I just saw Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the remake of the '70s Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And before I give my thoughts, I think it's probably important to say how I feel about the original, since this is a remake, and it's important to state any bias that you might have going into especially a remake or any kind of property that has another iteration or installment in it. I saw Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory once, I think, when I was really young, like 5 or 6 or something like that, and I couldn't tell you anything about it as a kid. Which like when I was when I was however young it was, the only thing I remembered about that movie was the Oompa Loompas. That was it. I remembered the song, and I remembered the dated text that came up next to them as they were singing, and I that's all I remembered. And as I got more into movies, I I was reminded of more of the more iconic scenes, like the whole like a lot more of the songs. I can't remember too many of them off the top of my head, but I do remember liking them when I listened to them, like Candyman, I guess, and obviously the Oompa Loompa song, and the I don't know what the title of it would be, Pure Imagination, the one that Gene Wilder sings. Um, so I have no bias coming into this. I have no real attachment to the Willy Wonka franchise, I guess, or just the name of Willy Wonka at all. I never read the book or anything like that. But I know it's probably one of the most adored kids movies ever, and that's cool. And I don't think it's, and don't misunderstand what I'm saying as me saying that this movie's bad, that the original is bad. It's just I haven't seen it in a really long time, and I can't remember it that much. But coming into this, this one had a reputation that okay, Tim Burton. There were two things that I knew about this movie coming in. One was that it was directed by Tim Burton, and oh god, okay, Tim Burton. The other thing I'll get to later. Tim Burton is a really divisive filmmaker. I'm only going to talk about right now before I start talking about Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the remake. I'm just going to give a brief history on how I feel about his movies that I've seen. I'm not going to talk about Nightmare Before Christmas because he didn't direct that. With Tim Burton, I've now seen 9 of his movies, including Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and with the 9 movies that I've seen, I've hated 4 of them. I'm indifferent to 1 of them, and I really, really like 4 of them. So he's like right in the middle, but I don't like Tim Burton. I think that he kind of is a representation of one of the things that I hate most when I watch movies, which is the not exactly style over substance, which he's often a big offender of that. But just the whole thing of you are so in love with your style, and there can still be substance there, but you are so in love with your style that you just think that you can tell, like the audience, you can tell that the director thinks that it is the coolest thing in the fucking world, how awesome this style is, and I hate that so much. I had that problem when I saw the first Matrix, where there are just scenes in that where it's like, we are just the coolest thing ever, and we're so fucking awesome, and you can tell that when you watch that movie. It bugs me. That's something that really bugs me when I watch movies. Tim Burton he does that a lot, and his style, I just don't like it that much. Which is not to say, again, I said there are 4 of his movies that I've seen that I really, really like a lot. Sweeney Todd. I don't watch a lot of movie musicals. I thought that one was really good. I actually remember a few of the songs, which almost never happens when I watch a musical. And though his style did kind of annoy me sometimes, he got a good villain. Is Alan Rickman. It was always awesome. I really liked that one. Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I think is a fantastic kids movie. I just love Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I think that's his second best movie. Batman '89. I still think it holds up as one of the better comic book movies ever made. Even though, I mean, it obviously has its problems. I mean, that is which this isn't as much of a problem for the movie. I might get around to this with Jesse at some point in a series on Batman, but that is not Batman. That is not Batman in that movie. And Ed Wood is just a perfect movie. It's a perfect movie. I would say that if I'm making a list of the best movies I've ever seen, that would be like easily top 3 best films I've ever seen in my life. That movie is it's a masterpiece, and I'm always, just because of Ed Wood, I will now watch anything Tim Burton's ever made, because that movie is just if you can recapture any of the spark that movie has, that would be awesome, because Ed Wood is awesome. I'm indifferent to Edward Scissorhands, and that will probably alienate a lot of people. I didn't feel much about it. I thought it was kind of it just seemed to me as being Tim Burton just doing whatever he wants with, oh, you got the weird freako guy, and it's Johnny Depp, and he has a pale face. Again, how many fucking times have we seen that in a Tim Burton movie? But movies of his that I don't like at all, Batman Returns. I could talk for hours about Batman Returns. Jesus Christ. I hate Dark Shadows. I still think of all the movies I've seen of his, that is easily his worst. That movie is just horrible. And I feel like there are a lot of parallels between that and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Beetlejuice, I hate. That'll alienate a lot of people. I know that is almost universally considered like top 4 of his movies. I think that movie's annoying. I think that movie is so irritating to watch. That it's so dated. Michael Keaton is really annoying in that movie, and I kind of like Michael Keaton. I thought he was a decent Batman slash Bruce Wayne, I guess. And I liked him in Much Ado About Nothing. I don't like him in that movie at all. That movie is kind of like what I said about, it thinks it's the coolest thing in the world. The performances in that don't hold up at all. And Alec Baldwin and Winona Ryder are just horrible in that movie. But I'm not talking about Beetlejuice. And now Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, which I hated. I hated this movie. Big shock. Someone didn't like the remake of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I can't think of anybody who did. I like looking at like ranked lists of directors and stuff like that. It's something I like doing. And I have always seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in the bottom, like, five or six Tim Burton movies, and I guess I can see why. I guess, which, don't get me wrong, this movie sucks, but I don't know. There's so many of his other movies. I think a lot of the other movies that I haven't seen of his are the ones that are often considered like the really bad ones, like the remake of Planet of the Apes and Alice in Wonderland. Just those movies just look like complete pig shit. Anyway, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I think that I'm gonna save the other thing that I heard about with this movie for last, which was Johnny Depp. I'm gonna save him for last, because yeah, I'm gonna save him for last. For last, really, just this is a Tim Burton movie, and you can really tell a lot of the sets are really flamboyant and just like are often shown with like, oh, such grace and like all that stuff, and Tim, like the way he films it, often thinks it's the coolest thing in the world. And so many of the time, I just find so many of the things that he, like so many of the sets that he has, I don't like them. I think that oftentimes there's too much going on. They're too gothic for my taste. They're just visually unappealing to me. I don't find them visually interesting. But there are a couple of things that I did kind of like visually with this movie in terms of sets. I think the what is it? Like the Candy Meadow with the Chocolate River. I think that was actually kind of a cool set, and that was and you really do kind of buy that world. Like that's one of the only times in this movie where I'm like, oh yeah, that could fit in the factory that he has, I guess. Maybe, I don't know. I actually do like the look of Willy Wonka. I actually feel like it's kind of a cool look for him. It seems like it is kind of its own thing when compared to how Gene Wilder looked in the original. So yeah, I for the most part, I don't like the visuals in this. It really just does seem like it's like a kooky, crazy, like Tim Burton. Whenever I've seen like pictures of him, like publicity photos, he always seems to be like in like the pose of like, oh, I'm a goofy artist and I'm just like a filmmaker. I just want to use my own imagination, which is fine. I think filmmakers should use their own imagination and that kind of stuff. But it just feels like again, I'm just repeating myself constantly. He just acts like he's in love with himself and his style, and it's just not a very interesting style. I know he has a lot of fans, but I just don't get it. I don't get it. How is this style even interesting at all? It always feels like the exact same thing. And yes, I've set myself up for the classic thing when people who don't like Tim Burton complain about Tim Burton. They'll start off with, he always feels like he's repeating himself. The architecture is always like jagged edges. Like everything's like angular. It's got like sometimes like arches and that kind of stuff. It's always Johnny Depp, Helena Bonham Carter starring in it. Always scored by Danny Elfman. It always just feels the same. That's another thing that I really hate. I really hate when I watch a movie and it just feels like I'm like the director is doing the same thing, especially with the same people. And that's I like it when directors can show that they can do different genres, and Tim Burton always seems like he's just doing a kooky, crazy world with a bunch of weirdos and like an outcast guy, and it bugs me. It just bugs me that it just comes off like the guy can't do anything else, and I think that could be part of the reason why I love Ed Wood so much, is that is not a Tim Burton movie at all, except for the fact that, I mean, it has Johnny Depp, and Ed Wood is meant to be like the crazy outcast guy. But that movie does break away from the formula of Tim Burton movies in a lot of ways. Like visually, there's no grandiose, comically silly, over-the-top sets that you're just like, this is so fucking weird and strange. It just looks like a movie, and it actually kind of proved to me, oh, this guy can do something other than that. And this movie just reminds me one more time, this guy can't do anything else other than his own style. And I want him to go back to Ed Wood. I want him to handle like a drama or something like that, an actual drama with emotions. Because even when he did that in his good movies, like Sweeney Todd, it's still flamboyant, over-the-top sets that are just like jagged edges. It's always visually the colors are muted, and I hate that. It's irritating to me. The cliches again of Tim Burton movies. Danny Elfman's score. Danny Elfman. I don't know how to feel about Danny Elfman. He kind of does get lumped into the category of composers that do borrow from themselves all the time. I would put John Williams in there a lot. I think the problem is Danny Elfman's what he composes most of the time just is not as appealing to me as what John Williams does. John Williams is just a better composer than Danny Elfman is, but Danny Elfman rips himself off so much in this movie. Like, I remember, and this was the one that really bugged me, like, he's borrowing so much from his Batman Returns score with the... If anybody who's seen that movie where, sometimes you have that, like, lone piano that's playing the same couple of notes, like, bum, 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 and it's like really light and it's supposed to be kind of atmospheric. They do that all the time in this movie, and it's copy and paste the same thing. And I'm just thinking, wow, can you really not do anything else, Burton? Can you not do anything else that's unique? Elfman, sorry. Anything else that's unique? And I mean, earlier on in his career, he had a lot of really good scores. I like the Batman score a lot. I like a lot of his superhero scores. I like the score to Red Dragon. It's all right. But again, like the things that he rips off, the Spider-Man score that he did, where it's like the big like orchestra, like and then in this it does the exact same thing, and I'm like, dude, do something else. Like, honestly, I mean, Hans Zimmer, I feel like he's actually somebody that, like, you can always tell that it's a Hans Zimmer score, but he always makes it sound different enough that it's not like you're ripping yourself off. And Danny Elfman at this point has just got on my nerves, and most of the soundtrack here, other than the flourishes that remind me that this is a Tim Burton movie, and this score is so bland. It's so unmemorable. And not only just the score, but the soundtrack. Like, the songs are so forgettable. I can't even believe it's like, how many songs are there in this movie? Like, like 5 or 6? I can't remember any of them. Not one. And then that is a failure on the part of making a musical, though I don't really know how much of a musical this is even supposed to be, because for so much of it, there are no big musical numbers, and that did kind of that was kind of strange to me when I watched this. Weren't there a lot more songs in the original? Again, I haven't seen it in a really long time, but aren't there like 8, like 10 songs in that score, like not score, soundtrack or something like that? There's got to be like 6 max. It just feels like it doesn't even feel like it's the same thing. They've just excluded, I guess, a lot of the more famous songs from the original, which I guess in a way that might be a good idea. Those are such beloved and beloved songs that you wouldn't really want to have anybody do it again. You might want to do your own thing. And it was nice that he that most of the songs in the movie were like, oh, it's from this time period, this time period, this time period, and this time period. It's nice in thought. None of them are memorable. None of them are catchy, except for the... Actually, you know what? Not even the one that a lot of people often find really, like, that they can't get out of their head. Like the one I'm talking about. The one at the beginning when Willy Wonka, like, first shows up. Like, I don't even find that memorable. It's just... I don't find it memorable. And I think that's, honestly, my thoughts of the entire movie overall. There is so little that is memorable about this film, and for so much of it, it just feels like no one really is putting that much passion in. Like, so many of the actors during once they get inside the factory, I mean, I think the acting is fine. It's okay for like the first 40 minutes, like before they get into the factory. It's fine. Like the kids are doing, they're fine, I guess. Like the grandpa got the guy who's playing the grandpa is really good, and for once Helena Bonham Carter didn't fucking annoy me. I hate her so much. She has only ever been good in Fight Club, as far as I've seen, and everything else. She's just this. She's a ham. She's a ham who plays the same role. At least Christopher Lloyd is a ham, but you know what? His one role is amusing. With yeah, most of the acting in the beginning of the movie is good, but then once they get inside of the factory, it's the Johnny Depp show. And again, I'm gonna save that for later, but most of the actors aren't even really allowed to act anymore. It just completely becomes about Johnny Depp and these over-the-top sets that Burton just finds far more interesting than I do. And they're not visually interesting, like I said before. They just feel all the same. It just feels like there's no visual flair to this at all. So many of the effects to make the world inside of the factory are so fucking dated. They are so fucking dated. And I don't like CGI when I compare it to practical effects, and a lot of the practicals that were done in the original. Again, I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know how much of this world, like how much creativity really was in that compared to this. But he's taking a lot of similar ideas and stuff like that from the original, and I guess they managed to do that with practical effects. Again, I haven't seen it in a while, so I don't know how it turned out in terms of how those sets look, but so much of this is so reliant on CGI, and you can tell so much of the time these actors are just standing right in front of a goddamn green screen or blue screen, or I don't know what the difference is, and it just looks so phony. It looks so fake. Like they are not there. It just feels artificial and just fake. It's just fake. And so many of the other things in the movie, like whenever they animate like the Oompa Loompas or anybody else doing like I remember at the end when Violet gets like the blueberry sucked out of her. Alright, I don't know. And she's like doing cartwheels and shit like that. It just looks like... I had the same problem with the early with the first two Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, which is with that kind of CGI, you can kind of see there's an airless, like these CGI creations don't have any weight to them. It's like they just glide through the air and they can just it's like they have no weight at all. Like it's just air, like they can just glide through air. And it's just, you can catch it, like, with in your own mind. You can notice it and be like, yeah, that's not there. It's not there. And it's fucking distracting. Though I do understand that a lot of the sets in this movie probably would have taken a really long time to do. If you were doing it practically, I'm sorry. It is really hard to, not only just because I don't find it visually interesting, but I can't get into the world that you've created here because it's so obviously fake. What else would there even be, really, before I get to Depp? Oh, so many of the scenes in this movie just feel like they're really rushed. Like probably one of the most famous scenes from like Willy Wonka story, I guess, is when Augustus Gloop gets sucked up when he's in the Chocolate River. And that scene is so quick and fleeting and just seems to just happen and that's it. That it's just like they did, that it's really like the movie's like, you know what, this scene's classic. You already know what it is. We'll just, we're not gonna do much new with it other than add a did they even have a song for that? That's how unmemorable these fucking songs are. But we're not going to do anything new with the scene. So just, it's the scene when the kid gets sucked up, and that's it, and we're just going to move on. And, like, no one's going to, like, bat an eye. No one's going to be, like, talking amongst themselves, like, oh, fucking hell, there's a fucking fat German kid just got sucked up. And, like, holy shit. This is a dangerous place. Oh my god. Isn't that weird? And I would have liked to see somebody react, even in all the scenes when these kids are getting sucked up into the air. Like, the reaction shots are horrible. It's like none of this is really happening. It's like, it's just, it just feels artificial, and like it's not there. So, like, whenever you cut back to, like the group of people standing in front of a goddamn blue screen, of course, after, like, Augustus Gloop has been sucked up into the air, they're just like, oh, look at that. Like, you couldn't get a better reaction shot out of these fucking people. And beyond that, I don't even really know who this movie's about. For the first 40 minutes, it's obviously about, like, Charlie and his grandpa and that stuff. It's obviously about them, right? Obviously. Wouldn't it be about them from the beginning of the movie to, oh, I don't know, the end of the movie? You have the first 40 minutes of the movie, and it's about them. And then for another hour, it's constantly jumping between characters like, oh, now we're going to give something about Violet. Now we're going to give something about Mike TV. And most of it is the goddamn Johnny Depp show, which I'm about to get to. And so much of it just feels so scattershot. Like, now we're doing this, mostly cut in between Johnny Depp and his fucking backstory. And then just at the end, 20 minutes of just more Charlie stuff. So it just feels like our main character has just not been present for an hour of the movie. That's not good. You need to have a consistent protagonist in a streamlined story like this. And I know something like Pulp Fiction, you can have different protagonists, but here it's obviously just like a streamlined plot. A streamlined plot. Have it be consistent with something. Maybe they wanted to have it be different from what it was in the original. I don't know. Again, I haven't seen the original in like a decade or something like that. So, all Depp aside, and so much of this movie, all of the things that are wrong with this movie, all of that aside, it's just a bad movie. It's visually uninteresting. It's not really very entertaining. It just feels like it lacks passion. It just feels like so many of the actors later on in the movie are just like, oh, acting, I guess. Like, no one really gets a chance to shine. All of the visuals just feel like they've been repeated from another area, except for the Candy Meadow, and I guess how Wonka looks. I like that stuff. And a couple of fine performances earlier on in the movie. It has a couple of little good things in it, and then a bunch of really bad stuff. But now we get to the other thing that I'd heard about before I had seen this movie. Johnny Depp. I love Johnny Depp. Not in this movie. Don't misunderstand this. If I were to make a list of like my all-time favorite actors, he would definitely be in the top 5. Probably even top 3. Johnny Depp is a fantastic actor, and it is a real shame that he has been lumped into these stupid fucking movies where he is forced to play the pale-skinned guy with a dorky hat and some stupid hair, and is always just a wacky guy. And it's depressing, because Johnny Depp is a great actor, and obviously Jack Sparrow is still, for me, one of my favorite performances in any movie ever. The whole series, maybe not 4, maybe, but in so many other things that I've seen him in, he's great. Ed Wood, it's ridiculous that he was not nominated for an Oscar that year. He is amazing in that movie, and I've seen him in so many things, and really, I only haven't liked him in a couple of things. Like, I didn't like him much in From Hell, and I thought it was his first role in the original Nightmare on Elm Street, so I'm not expecting him to be great in that. But no, most of the time, I'm always really impressed with what he's doing in a movie, and I think he has a kind of manic energy that if you can contain it, you are going to get gold. Just gold, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to have wonderful charisma. You can't take your eyes off of him in a good way, not like he's trying to have everybody look at him, and it's great. What have you done to Johnny Depp in this movie, Burton? Honest, I know you guys are friends, and that's cool. You guys, like, I don't have any problems if you guys are, obviously you're friends. I mean, he's been in fucking half of your movies or something like that. But, oh my god, what have you done to him? Like, and I blame you, Burton. I blame Burton for this, because there are moments in Depp's performance when some of this writing, which I didn't mention before, the jokes, they're not funny. Like, a very large portion of these jokes are just not funny, but occasionally you get a good joke. Like, occasionally you get an okay joke, and Depp totally sells it. Like, there are probably maybe 5 max of them in this film, but my favorite, and the one that always stands out, that stood out to me in this movie, is when, like, the guy that, I don't know what it was, like, he runs a nut company or something? I don't know. But he hands him the card, like his business card, and he's like, here, I'm in the nut business, and just, like, he goes to put it back, and like, Depp throws it over his shoulder. And it's the way he does it. The way he does it shows to you, like, this guy does have good comedic timing. This guy can be good. He can be really good. And you can see, like, in really tiny little moments of this fucking movie that this guy knows what he's fucking doing. Like, you can see it. And it's wasted on... What the fuck is this? What is this? What is this role? What is this performance? It's been millions of times that he's acting like a pedophile, and I know it's probably really tiring to hear that one more time, but he is! He's acting like a fucking pedophile! It's so disturbing to watch him in this movie, and it's really frightening, honestly. It's... And the performance, like, he is given, and like I said, there are a few lines that are kind of, they're alright, and they kind of get, like, maybe, like, oh, I recognize that, oh, that's amusing. I rarely laughed, I don't think I ever laughed out loud in the movie, which, that's not a fault of the movie, that movies really make me, like, actually laugh out loud, which is not to say that I'm jaded, I guess I'm just, harder to get to laugh than some other people. But he has some fucking lines in this movie, like when he talks to Mike TV about, like, give me some skin or something like that, and it's so bad. He is so annoying in this movie. He is so... He's captivatingly awful. But at the same time, it's like anytime he's on the screen, get away. Go away. I don't want you on the screen right now. You are ruining this already maybe not terrible up until, like, excluding Depp, but this bad movie. And you're just making it infinitely worse anytime he's on screen. And this character doesn't even make any sense. I feel like if you want these people to come to your factory to take over your business, wouldn't you be a little bit more interested in, I don't know, what they're like? Like, I mean, you can kind of tell in little moments that he's, like, again, good acting from Depp. He has, like, a little facial twitch. And it's like, oh, you're like this. And And you can kind of see that in his performance a little bit. But then it's ruined by him getting terrible lines. Terrible lines. Like his opening. I couldn't believe it. I honestly couldn't believe it. It was one of the most baffling things I think I've ever seen in a movie. And that's not, I'm not even exaggerating. I just remember as soon as he came on, I just went, that was me at the beginning, as soon as he came up, and it was downhill from there. You know, up until this point, I would have said that the worst performance that I've ever seen in a Tim Burton movie was Christopher Walken in Batman Returns. I think I'm gonna stick by that, because Christopher Walken in Batman Returns does not give a fuck. He does not care at all. Depp is putting effort into it. It's not turning out well. And again, I don't really blame Depp. I blame Burton, because he's directing him to act like this. But this is a travesty. This is horrible, horrible stuff right here. Whenever Depp is on screen, it's just, it's sad. It's really sad. And I guess that's really, I guess that's about it. I guess final thoughts. This is about as bad as I thought it was going to be. Depp was irritating. The sets were exactly what I thought I was going to see from a goddamn Tim Burton movie. The acting was okay. Overall, even some of the kid actors were all right, though there are moments when they are just awful. Yeah, give me a sec. Overall, the acting isn't the problem, which it rarely is for me in a Tim Burton movie. At least a lot of his bad movies. I don't always have a problem with the acting. In fact, I think he can often direct his actors very well. Watch Ed Wood. Some of the best performances you're ever going to see in a movie in that. Martin Landau is holy shit in that movie. Is he good? But overall, it just feels like more of the same from Tim Burton and his wacky team of misfits that seem to just be hell-bent on not changing, because you know what? His movies make a ton of money, which is really disappointing. It's a lack of vision. There's no initiative to change with Tim Burton. And I think overall I'm going to say I think I'm going to say a very, very, very high 3 out of 10. I was not impressed at all by this movie. It was completely lacking in anything. Just I think that, like I said before, the biggest thing about this movie is just, or I don't know if I had said this before, but it's just such a blah of a movie. It's just, you don't feel really anything once you've seen it. You don't really, you just don't care. And that could very well be the worst thing that a movie could possibly do. So yeah, a very high 3 out of 10.